The announcement of the guided deregulation of the downstream oil sector has been greeted with mixed reactions. But for Adewale Tinubu, the Chief Executive Officer of Oando, a major player in the oil and gas industry, the latest move by the federal government was late by at least 2 decades. Now, I spoke to him at the just concluded World Economic Forum for Africa meeting in Rwanda about what total deregulation means for the petroleum marketers, Nigerians, the government, the petroleum industry bill, and his outlook for Oando, Nigeria. What's your view of total deregulation of the downstream sector?
Now, my view hasn't changed for 20 years. I think we wasted a colossal amount of money in a bid to provide a social palliative in terms of cheap petroleum products. But all we did was destroy our own downstream industry. We don't have fully functioning refineries. We don't have a pipeline system that works efficiently. We don't have a terminal system that works. Effectively, what we did was we exported all our jobs to Europe in the oil sector, where we ship crude oil out to them in its raw form. They refine it and add value to it, and they sell it back to us at a premium. And then we redistribute it simply because we subsidize. And the issue is, as a nation, we have probably spent the equivalent of 50 new refineries since we started subsidizing petroleum products in Nigeria. We should be exporting and supplying the whole of Africa all their refined petroleum product needs. Instead, we exported our jobs abroad.
What would total deregulation of the downstream sector mean for all major petroleum marketers in terms of forex revenue and so on?
We need to understand that deregulation creates cost-reflective compensation. In other words, if you take a barrel of crude and you refine it into products and you sell it, you need to get the value back of a barrel of crude. If not, you cannot go back and buy the next barrel of crude. Our refineries need to be profitable. They need to be able to collect their costs back so they can expand their operations and they can even stay afloat. In other words, do the repairs when they need to do the repairs. And that's step one, to ensure that the NMPC can perform its statutory function of refining profitably within our environment. Next step is to encourage investment, both indigenous as well as international investment, to come in to invest in our downstream sector. We have a very, very large consumption of refined petroleum products, which requires further refining capacity to be invested in this country. And it's only going to occur if an investor knows that if I put capital down, I will get my money back one day. The fact that you never get your money back because the government has to pay the difference in form of a subsidy is what has really decimated our downstream industry over the years.
But would this encourage the construction of modular refineries?
Companies must grow. So when you start as a marketing company, you start as a trading company, you sell, the next thing you want to do is vertically integrate. Okay? And you may not necessarily have the money to build one refinery yourself, but what stops 5 downstream companies from coming together, having 20% each and doing a refining project? The whole idea is to ensure that we capture better margins by using our capital in a more profitable manner. And that includes ensuring that we refine locally, because the crude that you require for the refining is here in Nigeria in abundance.
What's your short to medium term outlook following full deregulation of the sector?
I think it's certainly going to be vibrant. This was a courageous step by the government, and I commend them for stopping the waste, because it's right now as we speak, I think our current subsidy is close to $1 billion a day in reality. And why would we want to spend 30 billion a day in subsidizing consumption? Nobody borrows money in their household to buy food to eat. They may borrow money to buy a property or buy a car, anything with a capital in nature, but the minute you borrow money to consume, I mean, you're already on a path to self-destruction. And that's what Nigeria has been doing. We're running a deficit budget, and with the budget we want to, the whole idea of subsidies has caused a lot of problems for us.
Tell us, how much of renewed militant attacks in the Niger Delta has affected Oando's businesses?
It's a problem for everybody in the industry, there's no doubt about it. So we are invested in one of the joint ventures. NAOC joint venture. We have a 20% stake there, and we have been victims of consistent attacks, which have really affected up to 20 to 30% of our production. When those attacks come in, we have to shut operations, and that really affects not just our operations privately as a corporate entity, but of course the nation's ability to export as much oil as it should be, and invariably the amount of government take is postponed. The amount of dollars that they would have been available for the central bank is also postponed by these actions. So it is a serious problem for everybody.
So what's the outlook for Oando?
The first step has been the downstream. I hope we have full unrestricted deregulation as quickly as possible. It's a governed system where there are price caps. I think the price caps are clearly to ensure there's no exploitation, but eventually we would expect that those price caps will not be really relevant. The most important thing is a good service and availability of products nationwide. I would like to see there's more public-private sector participation, and there have been announcements regarding the NNPC depots and the pipelines for private sectors to show expressions of interest to contribute towards revamping and operating these assets. They're very excited about that because there's a substantial amount of latent capacity. There's over 1 million tons of storage and over 2,000 kilometers, I believe, of pipelines available to this nation, which are sub-optimized, and certainly having the private sector work hand in hand with the NNPC would be very good for the country. In the midstream, I expect to see us complete some of the gas pipelines to ensure that the new power plants are working. We have some pipeline initiatives where we're building out the Lagos pipeline phase 4 already as we speak. We have over 150 customers taking gas from us, and we have a pipeline initiative in Port Harcourt which we're building out as well. I think that in the upstream, we're looking forward to certainly having the joint ventures, which is the onshore production, converted into production sharing contracts, such that the government's share, which is often delayed and sometimes never paid, okay, is now taken over by a system that ensures that the private sector can fund that share, or we can actually use the production. In other words, have X percentage of the production to serve as cost oil, which will pay for the expenditure regarding the projects, and the balance of the oil we share as profit oil or after payment. Of course, we will all pay our taxes as well. But the advantage is that we will not have any delays in projects while we are waiting for the government's share to come in. Okay, we will be able to proceed in earnest to ensure that we achieve our production targets. We ought to be, from a reserve to production ratio, we should be at 4 million barrels a day. Unfortunately, we're still struggling at under 2 now, in view of the fact that Forcados is shut down, and there are some challenges in our industry.
What are your views regarding the Petroleum Industry Bill?
It's quite sad. It took its time, but I think it took its time because it had too much in it for one bill, and there were always so many divergent views. So in reality, what needs to be done first and foremost is the fiscals. And once the fiscal terms are extracted, then the rest of the issues could be taken. So a slimmed down version, from what I understand, is now going through, and that should be approved. But I think that waiting for a PIB is no excuse for the reform we need to do in the industry. And I'm quite encouraged by the steps the minister is taking towards reforming NNPC as a corporation. They've done an extensive reformation, making the units profit centers, for example, such that the corporation can contribute, a net return to the federal government, that's the main investor, to improving the separation of powers between the regulatory requirements of the NNPC, of the government, okay, and making sure the ministry and the minister is executing these regulatory requirements and not the national oil company. So there's certain things we could have done and we need to do, and we don't need the new laws to do them. And that's accountability, and there is a big move towards that. You're seeing the NNPC figures get published on a monthly basis, and there's a lot more transparency in the industry.
We're almost into the half of the year, and looking at all the strategies that have been put in place by the federal government, what's your outlook for the market for the rest of the year?
Well, we're excited. At the end of the day, the macroeconomic situation in our industry is improving with all the reform and changes we spoke about in the downstream and the upstream. And we play in all the three sectors. So certainly with the downstream reform, is going to see us increase our throughput substantially. The reform we expect to occur in the upstream is going to ensure that we can increase our production. It also means that service equipment that hitherto was not capable of being deployed can now be deployed because cash calls are being paid. Clearly, we as a company we faced the same challenges other oil companies faced last year, and we did take a charge on our earnings. And what we did was to focus our efforts at ensuring that we sold down our interest to raise about $350 million, which we're successfully prosecuting, and restructure our loans, which we've done. So this is certainly going to be a profitable year for us, and we're looking forward to enjoying the benefits.